The smart CFO will think maybe I'll trade one for the other, but think about what would happen if every CFO based their entire business on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up 25% or 30% a year, wouldn't the other half of your business also go up by 30% a year? It's clear that there will be a merger if stocks use Bitcoin to make money. 5% more than it was 24 hours ago, and 5% more than it was 7 days ago. The size of this other big pool will grow by 3.5 and 3.2. And I don't think it stays the same just because Bitcoin works better. I've said before that my idea is like this. If you look out into the infinite future, if the money supply or currency in dollars grows at 8% a year, let's say, and if you see the SP index growing at that rate or that rate plus, it will be that rate or that rate plus 2 or 3%. That would mean that Bitcoin should be growing 8%, 10% faster, or 8% faster with more Y swings. In this world, Bitcoin is worth 20V, 20R, the SP is worth 12V, 12R, and the money supply is growing by 8% each year. Again, that's the bear case or the bull case. The bad news about stocks is that they haven't done as well as the money supply. And that has to do with tax policy. I mean, if you look at the main factors, innovation and efficiency make the case for stocks doing better than the money supply. If you really come up with robots and AI, then a company could have, 100 workers doing the work of 10 million people with just AI and robots. That means you have a lot of property value, but not much cost, right? The good news is that you come up with new things. Now, what's stopping you from doing better than the currency supply tax rule? Because of taxes and rules, your costs go up in one way or another. And those are choices that are made by politicians. So it looks like the world has been going up. The SP is up about 8% to 9% a year, and the dollar is up about 7% to 8%. They're pretty much the same, but SP may be up 1% more. So I don't think Bitcoin will have a 50% R for the next 30 years. That is, because then there would be nothing left but it. That's what you should expect. It's getting closer, but it might never reach that point. Michael Saylor just talked about how Bitcoin could support national currencies and change how people are responsible with money. With no longer being able to print money, let's take a closer look at how countries might change their focus to competing for Bitcoin reserves. Is it possible that Bitcoin could become the foundation of good government and stable money? Let's look into what Michael Saylor says about what this might mean for economies and countries around the world. That is a victory for the virus of the logical mind. Of course, I agree with what you say about rational leaders. Do you agree that's lovely? As we've seen with humans, people who learn about Bitcoin become smarter. A good number of the Bitcoin maxi slogans and tropes are based on facts. I believe Bitcoin makes sense of things. It makes sense to cut down on waste and boost productivity. Extend your time range, lower the risk of your counterparty, and raise your options. All of these things do happen. I believe that Bitcoin will bring about reason as it grows. It will start with people, then spread to families, and finally to businesses. Like a company that bought Bitcoin as an investment, at the end of each quarter, they would ask how much of this cash do we want to pay out in dividends and tax at 30% or 40%, how much of this money do we want to use to cover our debt? And is there too much property out there? If we have this much cash, how much do we want to use to buy small to medium-sized businesses and join them? How much of this cash do we want to turn into Bitcoin? Okay. That's a set of choices that make sense, not the irrational decision. We need to get rid of it right away because putting it in the bank account will only make things worse. That's why I believe the businesses will become smarter as Bitcoin grows. I also think that countries will be smarter because they will have more choices in that Bitcoin 24 scheme. The big model wasn't the only thing we made. The economy and the Bitcoin model are interesting, but people don't care nearly as much about a global asset class as they do about the Bitcoin model. For example, if you move to a place with no income tax and accept the Bitcoin standard, this is what will happen. This is what's really interesting about the micro models. You have 3 maxes, and that's a choice you make with your family. What happens if you take out a mortgage and use the money to buy Bitcoin? This means that the micro model for a person has a lot of emotional weight. Then there's a company model, which is like a small model for businesses. It also shows what happens when a business moves all of its cash into Bitcoin. You can change that too. You might also think, okay, I have a business. What would happen if I sold half of my stock tomorrow and used the money to buy Bitcoin? That's how much your business is worth $100 million. What would happen if you sold $100 million worth of stock and bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin? What if you kept the Bitcoin for 21 years? You can look at that right now. That is very doable. That's why I think the business plan is interesting. After that, I think we made these models of country states, but we made one for a country that owed money. It's like you owe country state money. Why would you buy Bitcoin? Or okay, you're already in debt. What if you take out debt to pay for your running losses? Not a good idea in general. What if you borrow money to buy Bitcoin? It works out to be a pretty good idea. Okay, you can say that's bad, but that's not bad. You can do better than the SP 500 if you borrow $3 billion at 1% interest and then use that money to buy Bitcoin. It's only bad when you borrow $3 billion and then spend it all on things like bills and don't have any savings to show for it. It's bad when you spend $3 billion on things you'll use up quickly. We've talked about how Bitcoin could change the way governments handle their money and make people compete for Bitcoin funds. Now, we want to know what you think about a few important questions. Can Bitcoin completely change how states handle their money? In a market run by Bitcoin, how do you think governments will be able to compete? Check out these two great movies on your screen for more daily dose crypto news. Click now and we'll see you in the next movie.